Today, we're honored to sit down with Chris Overton, Oscar-winning director of The Silent Child, CEO and founder of Slick Films, and an official judge and mentor for Outstanding Screenplays Shorts Screenplay Competition. Chris brings a unique blend of artistic vision and industry experience, and in this exclusive conversation, he shares what makes a great short screenplay, how emerging writers can break into the film world, and where short-form storytelling is headed next. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. So I want to kick things off with asking you what first originally drew you and excited you to the world of filmmaking. I know you started off as an actor, moved into directing. So I want to know how you first got into acting and then what drew you to directing. How easy or difficult was that transition? And then how did that lead to you creating your short film, The Silent Child?
Yeah, I mean, I started a long time ago when I was very young. My mum always said I was desperate to be inside the TV. I couldn't understand the concept of a television, and I always used to say I was about 5 years old, like I want to be in that box. And then I begged my mum for a video camera when I was about 13 years old, and I kind of rounded up my the kids from the neighborhood, and I made this film about bullying, and I shot it, I edited it, and then I packaged up these DVDs and I took them around our neighborhood and I knocked on doors and I said, "Hi, this is, a really important film. Can you, buy a DVD from me?" And I sold out. I sold all my DVDs and I made like £13. So I actually made a profit on my first film. So I learned distribution from a young age, and that honestly was my introduction to cinema. And from there, I set up a production company. I started to produce show reels for actors. And then I met my partner Rachel Shenton, and she said she had this idea for a film that was inspired by a lady she was living with over in America while she was filming a series called Switched at Birth. And she told me about this idea. She said it's about a deaf little girl that can't communicate with her family. And I was just like, oh my God, you have to write that. And so she did. So I'm always, proud to say that I'm the one that kind of, told her, put pen to paper and write it. And she did. And when I read that, I genuinely think that's when I became a director. I love filmmaking before that. I'd set up a production company. It's always been within me ever since I was young. But in terms of directing, I didn't really know. I liked all elements of filmmaking. Like producing, being a first AD, cinematography, sound, editing. I learned it all really. But reading that script, it was not necessarily like, oh, I want to be a director. It's more like, no, we have to tell this story. So, like, kind of the producing and directing came together, and yeah, we made The Silent Child, which was my first proper project, really. Yeah.
And winning an Oscar for a directorial debut is sort of a new writer's dream, but really hard to emulate. Just an incredible feat. Can you talk us through? I mean, I love that you just said that it was the original idea that captured you straight away, and then Rachel, your partner, wrote it. Did you have a sense that it was going to be that special, or can you talk us through the entire process from the idea to the production, to funding, to everything that then led to your Oscar win?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually fairly a fairly quick process, really. If I think back now, Rachel wrote it very quickly, within like a couple of days. I think she had the idea in her head, maybe for a while, and then when she actually wrote it, it was just about developing it then, and going back and forth, and the producers at the time, even the cinematographer. Gave their input and strengthened that script, and we had help from Ol Parker, who's a big director. He's done films like Mamma Mia and stuff like that. He also helped us with the investment to make the film. So we had a lot of help on the script, and but really right from the beginning that idea was very special. Like it really was the foundations that in Rachel's head and her life experience. Her dad was profoundly deaf, Her living with this person in LA while she was filming this show, Switched Her Birth, which was one of the first TV shows which had sign language in. So it was kind of like bathed in this like authenticity. It really was like it wasn't just someone writing about a subject that they didn't know. Um, and then yeah, so after a bit of development, it was actually going one direction. And I remember I had a dream, and I woke up crying, and I said, "Oh right, I've got the ending for the film. We've got to tweak it." And the end of the film came from a dream I had, and I think um yeah, it's just weird how things like that happen. So I think along the way, the script was just strengthened, and we were in a position where we were happy with the script, and then we had to start raising the funds for it. And I think that's always the biggest hurdle for indie film. Honestly, I think sometimes it's not about talent. It's about how many millionaires do you know. Um, and I think that definitely applies for feature films. But for us, we did a crowdfunding campaign, and it was honestly one of the hardest things I've ever done. Um, myself, Rachel, and the other producers, we it was like a full-time job, and we all worked really hard. And we eventually raised like £10,000, and we shot this film. And we edited it within a couple of months, like 4 or 5 months, and we were very lucky to get into Rhode Island Film Festival. We won the grand jury prize. That was the first film festival we've ever been to, but also the first screening for The Silent Child, and it was amazing. It was like 2,000 people in this massive American auditorium. I've never seen anything like it, and that meant winning that award meant we could apply for the Oscars, and we were just so naive. We didn't think anything of that. We were kind of like, oh, okay, great, and then we got a message from the festival director, like, a week or so before the deadline, saying, look, this is serious, guys. You have to apply. And we're like, oh, we thought it was automatic. So you have to get your submission ready. So we in a very hurried way rushed our application to the Oscars through. You carry on with your festival journey and don't think anything of it, and then kind of the rest of the story happened. It was fantastic.
And the Rhode Island Film Festival, was that the first time you'd seen the film with a sort of large audience and their
Yeah,
reaction to it? That must have been a
yeah.
thrilling moment. Tell me about that.
Well, it was quite a raucous audience, actually. I remember they showed about 9 films. It was opening night, and I didn't really understand at the time that to be an opening night, it was a big deal. We didn't, it was exciting. Um, and yeah, it was quite a raucous audience, lots of laughter. And I think when The Silent Child came on, like at times you just could hear a pin drop. Like honestly, it was just completely silent, and the mood in that auditorium really shifted, and it felt quite special. Um, so yeah, I don't know. And then speaking to people after, it really did have a good reaction. I think it moved people. The message of the film. Um, it kind of got people thinking. Um, which was the intention. Uh, so yeah, that was an amazing experience, and one we will treasure forever, really. So Rhode Island's always got a little piece of our heart.
And as a first-time director, were there challenges that you faced when it came to things like casting, working with all that incredible child actor? Were there sort of things that came about during filming that you personally found challenging, or was it more on the funding and sort of putting your film out there?
I think because of my acting background, I found the easiest bit working with the actors. And the most enjoyable part of the process. I mean, it was difficult working with a 5-year-old child. She commanded the set, like whatever, if she didn't want to play ball, then the whole crew had to kind of wait for her. But she was incredible. Um, there was a lot of time we spent with her beforehand to try and build that relationship. So when we did get on set, um, that that really paid off because we were her friends at that point. And yes, it was challenging, but she my the style of acting I like to try and get from from the actors I work with is just as natural as possible, you know. So that's just something she just had. Um, and she was, I think, one of the only children that we auditioned that was profoundly deaf. Like British Sign Language was her first language, whereas a lot of other kids, it was their second language, you know, or they were hard of hearing or partially deaf. But she was, you know, profoundly deaf. I think the biggest challenges as a director doing your first project is communicating the vision. I could see it all in my head, but it was quite difficult to kind of get that across to a crew at times, you know. And the challenges of there never being enough time. That was
Mm.
really hard. We had to battle with snow and, you know, the elements, like any, you know, just the normal problems most filmmakers face. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just always look back on that experience with great fondness, really. Um, I think there were days where like we it was just all falling apart. I think day two just all kind of fell apart, really. And I just kind of thought, oh my God, all these people have invested in this project. I really felt the pressure, and we were trying to work something out, and I was like, we should be filming right now, and we're losing, like we're burning through the time, and somehow, like people talk about, you plan in film, and particularly indie film, you plan for everything to go wrong, and it does. But
Mm.
actually, someone said to me, a director friend called Chris Fretwell, he said, you know, people plan for things to go wrong, but also things will go right, and he was correct in that. You know, a lot of things went very well as all the things that went wrong too.
So is that one of the key lessons that you've taken from that experience that still you use today and resonates with you today, or were there other lessons that you still use today from that experience?
I think, yeah, I mean, definitely. I think letting go a little bit, you know. I'm someone that likes to be super organized, have all my shots planned out. But actually, there's a, you know, I've had another experience with a short film that we had like an extra 9 months to prepare because of COVID. And it didn't matter how prepared we were. We had all the time in the world. I did a shot list for every shot of the film, but still things went wrong, but things went right too. So I've kind of just let go a little bit, and I'm like, I know things are going to go wrong, but they're going to go right. So all you can do is prepare as much as you can, and whatever's meant to be is meant to be, which is, you know, easier said than done to just kind of let go. But I think that is something I try and hold on to now. Yeah.
And all of this experience makes you a fantastic judge and mentor for the Outstanding Screenplays
Thank you.
Shorts competition. Can you talk a bit on that experience? What do you enjoy most about reading all these scripts that come to you from these emerging writers? What do you enjoy, and what stood out to you the most as being something that you kind of really like to see from writers, and that you think, there's, like what you said, there's an idea that could be something really special?
Yeah, I'm always surprised with the scripts that I get from Outstanding Screenplays. Obviously, I don't read every single script that's submitted. I get like the shortlisted ones, which is still quite a lot. And I'm always surprised at the originality of them. You know, each year thousands and thousands of scripts are churned out, but I'm always surprised that, yeah, this is something new. And I love that. I think Outstanding Screenplays obviously gets a very international uh, selection of scripts and a lot of applicants from all around the world, which is really nice. So I'm always reading scripts with lots of different you know, cultural influences and from different countries by different filmmakers. So it's always exciting. You never know what you're going to get. But yeah, I'm just surprised that like there's a new story or a new theme or something I haven't thought of before, you know, and some really strong drama genres as well. Like, you know, I read a few horror scripts in the last round, and you know, that's something I don't delve too much into, but they're just brilliant. You know, just the quality of the writing. I'm very lucky to read them, you know, and read the shortlisted ones. The standard is just so high.
And is there a particular structure that you like to look for in a short? Because obviously, short films can take a number of different forms. It's quite an art to condense it down to a short form
Yeah.
storytelling. Are there particular structures you look for? Do you like to see maybe a powerful twist towards the end? Or are there certain beats that you like to see?
Not really. I mean, there's a few key things I do look for in a script, but it's just so subjective, isn't it? It's just, I always say it's just my opinion. I'm not wrong. I'm not right. And that's the beauty of film. Two people can read the same script and have very different opinions of it. It's an amazing thing, really. But one thing I do always keep in mind is how festivals will receive that film. So I look at it, I look further ahead. So I look when this is made into a film, you know, how long is it going to be? How difficult are festivals going to find to program it? Um, and will it capture them quickly? Um, so yeah, I think when I read scripts that are like 39 pages, I'm like, that's tough. It's really hard. So I tend to look for scripts under 20 pages, even though The Silent Child was 25 pages. I remember our first cut was like 30 minutes, then it was 25, and then we finally got it under 20 minutes. So we could have saved ourselves a lot of time, effort, and money if we would have just worked on that script to tighten it up. So I think people can squeeze the juice a little bit more. I tend to look for, I love things that don't have so much dialogue. I feel like when scripts have loads and loads and loads of dialogue, it's something me and Rachel, when we're working together and she's writing, I'm directing, my notes will always be, can you say that with a look? Could you say that
Mm.
with a line of action instead of 8 lines of dialogue? So yeah, I love to see things, the visual, the cinematic language, on how that's written and how people interpret that, not just spoon feeding the audience and saying it in the line of dialogue. That's the main thing I look for.
And you said there that you had initially a longer edit. Was it quite hard to edit your own story down? Because I think it would be quite interesting for writers to know maybe what key things they should be looking for and what things can be taken out.
Oh God, yeah, I think you need someone else. It's you know you got to kill your darlings, right? That's the hardest thing to do as a director, because that there'll be a meaning behind a certain scene, and then when someone looks at it from the outside, they won't know what that meaning is. Or if it's in a film, for example, the pain that you went through to shoot that particular shot or something stays with you, whereas if you get someone on the outside to just look at it, they're going to just give you the truth. So yeah, I think it's helpful to have a small group of people in a network that you really trust and just give it to you straight and just say, look, it's nice, but is it doing anything? Every scene in your script should move the story along, and I'm guilty of that sometimes. Like, we'll be going through our feature script that we've got at the moment. I'm like, yeah, but it does this, and Rachel will say, yeah, but what is it? Is it moving the story along? And I'm like, no, but, and she's like, no, well, it has to go then, and it does, really. Um, so I think that's a constant battle. A nice moment, a transition. They've all got to have a purpose, I think.
And is there anything you like to look out for in a first page that hooks you in?
That's such a good question. I feel like this stands out to me, actually. I don't know the name of the script, but it was a beautiful script. Um, but there was so many characters in the first page introduced, like this character is here, and it's like there was like 7 characters introduced on the first page. I was like, whoa, I can't take that in. Um, so I feel like that first page should should make an impact, but like just be careful not to overwhelm that reader with like so much information. Introducing seven characters, and this script was amazing. It was a war script, I think, about Ukraine. It was such a beautiful script. I remember that was my feedback on it, that there was about 7 or 8 characters within the first page, and I was just like, I think that was such a shame. It didn't start off on the right foot, and I think, it would have probably perhaps, I don't know, be a little bit stronger if that could be spaced out more. But yeah, so don't overwhelm the reader in that first page. And I think there's a lot of people that might say, oh, the first page is so key. Well, I think it's the first 5 pages. I think any reader, you can give a reader five pages. If you're not hooked by then, maybe even a little bit more. But I don't think someone would read the first page and go, no, no, no good. They might, but I would want to, me personally, I would want to keep reading a little bit more than that. Yeah, I think I don't think people should worry too much about not packing everything into one page or that first page.
And the main notes that you like to look out for when giving feedback, is that generally to do with the story as a whole, character development, whether the start or the ending needs to be stronger? Are there specific things you like to look out for?
I think characters are really, really important, and I said like how the lack of dialogue is is a benefit, but also that dialogue so important to the character, right? I think you can very quickly like a character just from one line of dialogue. We've got our own competitions, the Slick Films Fund, and the winner of that was called Rocket Fuel, and it's written by and directed by Jordan Scott Kennedy. And the dialogue is some of the best dialogue I've ever read. So funny, it's about these two kids from Bradford in north of England, and the dialogue is so amazing because it's they're talking like adults, and it's so funny. So on that first page, you read some of the dialogue and you instantly know who these characters are and you want to see what they do. So I think for me, I don't know what's going to happen. I need to get to the end to see what's going to happen. So I think that the one thing I'd like to see as soon as possible is good characterization. And I think that can be really helped with, you know, the description. In the example I just gave, one of the characters' names called Mullet, and because he's got a mullet, so you can imagine, what they look like. It's very descriptive. The dialogue is incredible. So some scripts you read are really easy to picture in your own head, and they're the best ones, in my opinion. I think so, anyway.
And you mentioned just on the ending, you mentioned with the silent child that you actually had a dream that sort
Yeah.
of changed the ending. But obviously the story would have been the story. How important do you think it is to have maybe a more effective ending? Or, do you look for twists? Do you look for a different resolution or to
Mm.
get the audience thinking something? How important, once you have the story, do you think is an effective ending?
Yeah, I think the ending is really important because that's what you leave the audience with, right? I think it's a choice. How do you want that audience to leave? How do you want them to make them feel? Because that's the lasting effect, really, the ending. So the Silent Child was very cold, like very emotional, like you know, i- in a way, to some people, slightly traumatic. We don't. It's not a happy ending. It's a hopeful ending because it's. I think that comes from the credits, but another short film I did called In Too Deep, we left that for the audience to decide. We left it very ambiguous, which I think is also really nice. But yeah, I think I always lean probably more towards an uplifting, hopeful ending, as do Hollywood. They love that kind of ending. But yeah, I think it can be bolder and smarter to sometimes be a little bit colder, and you might learn more from a colder ending. Yeah, but ending that's super important. I think you can even work backwards if you've got the ending to a project or a script. That's great. You can work backwards from there. Um, but yeah, super important. You can have a great story up until then. I've read them. I've read scripts where I'm like, God, this is so good, and then it ends, and you're like, what a shame. And then a 4, 5 star script becomes a 3 star. or it just
Mm,
doesn't leave any impact because it just doesn't have that ending. It's hard. It's not easy to get that ending.
mm. And do you think writers should be leaning into going for a strong genre or a strong theme, or maybe leaning into a true story? What are your thoughts just generally?
I think you've got to write what you know and what gets you out of bed every morning. For us and for myself and Rachel and people at Slick Films, it's 9 times out of 10, it's like true stories that help raise awareness for important issues. That's what gets us out of bed. For other people, it's horror. It's action, it's thriller. I think it's whatever the writer is compelled to write. And I think it's easy to look at what's doing well, what's successful, what's winning the Oscar every year. But if that's not what you do or what you're compelled to do or not what you enjoy doing, then I don't think you should do it. Eventually, your success will come from, you know, what you're compelled to write, what you're compelled to do. I think I feel quite fortunate that, it feels that what me and Rachel like to do, it does feel quite important and people respond to it quite well. I've never really been one to dive very deep into horror. But I remember a couple of years ago, projects that won Outstanding Screenplays, one of the best scripts I've ever read, Mina Finds Her Edge. Just unbelievable. That's a horror. It's like a horror comedy. So it's just incredible, and for me to say that, like, and I really wanted that one to win, so I was so happy that it did. But I think writers have to write what they want to write and what they're compelled to write. I think that's the best way to serve your career and to keep yourself sane. Yeah.
And one of the interesting things we often encourage writers of feature screenplays to do, and what Damien Chazelle did really successfully with Whiplash, is to
Yeah.
film a proof of concept short film. So, I
Mm.
wanted your take on that because that's quite different to, say, other forms of short film. Is to take a scene and make a proof of concept. How would you recommend a writer with a feature chooses the right scene to do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you'd have to have a feature script first, wouldn't you? So it depends how you're lining up your career, I think I really do believe that shorts are the most amazing stepping stone because you've really got to make loads of mistakes before you can do a feature, really. I mean, you don't have to. You can make them doing a feature, and I'm sure when I'm doing my feature, I'm going to make a whole heap of mistakes. But hopefully, I've gotten loads of mistakes out of the way on short. So you're almost reverse engineering your career, aren't you? If you start with a feature and then you take a slice of that and do it into a short, that's great. Yeah, I think it's so hard, isn't it? It's so hard to get these projects made. So you've got to be careful how much energy you're putting into that short. And nowadays, does a proof of concept really get you over the line on a feature? I don't know. I'm really not sure. We could have made our feature we're working on at the moment into a short. In fact, it was a short film at first, and then we expanded it. Had we made that into a short film, I don't know whether it would have made any difference. We had a feature film in similar style to the Silent Child, which won an Oscar. We haven't been able to get that off the ground yet. I'm hoping, one day in the future we definitely will. So I don't know, but then you look at Damien Chazelle and that worked wonders. So I don't know. It's not one size fits all, is it? And I think the industry has changed a lot since the Whiplash short film was made. Um, with the introduction of streamers, it's really changing. So I don't know. I think I don't know if I have the an intelligent answer to give on that, really. I'm not sure if anyone should listen to my advice. I think you've just got to do your own thing and never, never, never give up.
Well, that's great advice there. Recently, Outstanding Screenplays short script competitions, one of the winners was Egg Timer. And
Yeah.
it's a really humorous, clever, heartfelt story about a woman turning 30, who feels the pressure from everyone, including her own ovarian eggs, crikey, to have children. So the film was co-produced by Outstanding Screenplays and your company, Slick Films. What was it that made you choose Egg Timer as the winner? And then how pleased were you with the production process, because it's now finished? So you've seen that from start to finish. So I'd like to hear about that whole process.
Yeah, and a shout out to Biscuit as well, who are also a production company on that too, who have just been amazing. Um, yeah, I mean, Egg Timer was it was such a good winner because I mean, you don't see many comedy scripts come through. I'd say 90% of the scripts that come through in whether it be our own competition or outstanding screenplays, the ones I read, I'd say 95% are drama. So when you read a comedy, especially one like Egg Time, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's just so brilliant. And what I love about Egg Time, it has a great message. It's funny, um, and it's also just very unique. You know, obviously, you just mentioned there that there's pressure from her own ovarian eggs. And when I read the log line, I was like, oh, how is that going to work? And you read the script, you know, it's just so clever. Um, and I think the team behind it, Rosie, the director, and Hattie, the producer, have just done such a good job bringing that together. And it's so exciting for that film as well. It's gonna, I think, just have such an amazing festival run. So I can't wait to see the success of that. Very excited for it. But yeah, we actually just showed a small clip at our Slick Film Summer Showcase. About 8 9 months ago, and it was only a small clip, but the whole audience were just in fits of laughter. So you know, I think people after loads of dramas, which is very typical at a film festival, you need a film like Egg Time to break that up and let that release from the audience. Um, so I think yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that comes about. It's going to be amazing.
And submitting to competitions like Outstanding Screenplays is a really great path to get your short film seen and read and then maybe even produced. But what are the other ways that you recommend new writers get their short films out there and read and potentially made?
I think it's tough, isn't it? It really is difficult, and it's this funding thing. This is like I feel like there's a funding crisis at the moment, which is why it's so good. Like competitions like this exist because uh, it allows it allows writers to go through the process and just keep coming back every year, and hopefully trying again. You know, um, the best advice I could give. I mean, you know, people might have a different view on this, but I'll always clash with them over this because I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't do this. A lot of people said never put your own money into things, and they're probably right. You shouldn't. But what if you can't get anything off the ground? What choice do you have? If we didn't put some of our own money into the Silent Child, we would never have the film. So, and I think particularly at the beginning of your career, if you are in a position to save a pot of money every month, I did this, you know, I saved, I was inspired by another director called Tom Turner, who directed me and Rachel in A Glimpse, and he saved a pot of money for a few years, and he had this pot of money, and he just spent it on his short film. I just thought, God, that's such a great way to do it, you know. So I did the same, and I was able to contribute that towards my next short film, and I will continue to do that until I'm in a position where I don't have to anymore. But I do get the theory that you shouldn't, you know, you shouldn't put money into your own films, and you should be paid, of course, but you've got to get going as well. So I would, if you're in a position to kind of either save a bit of money each month, build up a pot and kickstart like a little bit of money and get going with your project, I really would recommend that because if you believe in your own project, especially if you've not done anything before, it is really hard, even at short film level. Even if someone's got a really good script, a really good treatment, a really good idea, you still Google them and go, well, what have they done before? Oh, they haven't done anything. How will it go? You know, I'm sure everyone thought that about myself and Rachel when we did The Silent Child. Um, so yeah, I think if you can, contribute or do something to get your career going, just to prove that actually you know what you're doing a little bit. I think that's a benefit. I really do.
And many short filmmakers are turning to crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter or Seed and Spark. So, in your experience just on this subject, because it can be quite challenging, what are the key tips and main things that you think to make a really strong and successful campaign?
It is hard. It is really tough, but it's a great way to get a project going, and lots of people do it. I think another film that we're working on at the moment did the same, Lawn Dreams, and they raised like £30,000. I'm always so impressed when I see people, just because I've had the experience of it being, quite difficult, but we got there in the end. I think if you're doing a crowdfunder, my advice to you is you have to have the time to treat that like a full-time job. Like, really, if you're not going to spend at least a few hours a day for the next like 90 days, I wouldn't I wouldn't advise it. And if you can build a little team around you, if you've got more than one producer on your short film, so you're not alone, I would do that as well. And just remember, it's like if you're going to set up a crowdfunder, my advice is to not just think, set it up and just leave it and that'll be it. You have to work hard and drive traffic to that page. I think that's what it's about, which is hard at the moment, isn't it? With so much, there's so much content, but I really think it's a great tool. That's what we did anyway. We used it as a tool to direct traffic towards it. So if there was someone interested in our project, like an investor, I remember we did it old school. Like I had a friend who used to work at a newspaper company, and I begged her to give us an article for The Silent Child in the newspaper, and it had a little Indiegogo URL on there, and I think that investor found that article on her way to London in the newspaper. She clicked on it and she gave us £1,000, and we were like, brilliant, advertising works.
That's
So
incredible.
yeah, it's not just one thing. It's not just setting up a crowdfunder. It's setting up a crowdfunder, doing an event. At the end of the event, you say, like, thanks for coming. Here's our crowdfunding campaign. If you can give anything at all. That's what we used to do. Me and Rachel went round schools, and like we tried to give workshops and value back, and then we would use the crowdfunder as part of like our payment for doing the workshop. We would say, oh, can you put the payment on the crowdfunder? And then people like to back a successful campaign. So
Mm.
I think be careful of what you're asking for. If you've got a £50,000 budget and you're asking for £50,000, that's going to be really tough. Why not do half of that and then try and privately go and source the other half? Um, Especially with the tax credit going up at the moment, you can potentially claim some back there. There's lots of different ways it can be, like a patchwork quilt. So yeah, crowdfunding can be very rewarding, but very time consuming, and it can be really difficult.
And on the because you're a judge and you do give feedback, when a writer or new filmmaker is receiving feedback, can be quite a difficult process.
Mm.
Is there a particular mindset that you suggest writers come at receiving feedback so that they properly utilize it and can grow from it?
Yeah, I think so. I think just being aware that it's just an opinion, and it is hard to receive feedback. You just want to hear the good things, but it's not helpful. If everyone just said, "Oh, fantastic," it's really not helpful. Um, yeah, I think you've got to go to trusted sources as well. Like if you've got a small network of 3 to 5 people that you really trust, you know that if they're saying something, they mean it, and they know what they're talking about as well. Um, but it's just opinion, you know, it really is. So keep an open mind. If you want feedback, like just be aware that look, when I give feedback, like I've read certain scripts with outstanding screenplays, and I'm like, I don't have anything bad to say. I genuinely don't. And I'm like, oh God, that's so unhelpful. So I always try and find something, even if it's like formatting, or this could be formatted differently. But yeah, it's difficult for the reader sometimes. I don't. I never like to give, feedback that's negative just for the sake of it. What's the point in that? But I feel like maybe some people feel like they have to if they're marking a script or they're paid to do a script report. But I think it doesn't serve the writer very well if they're just doing that for the sake of it. So I try not to do that. I have definitely read some perfect scripts and literally like I don't know what to say. Don't touch this. Don't. It's ready to shoot, you know?
Yeah, that's always a good situation to have that feedback. You also mentor for our shorts competition. So when it comes to mentoring a finalist writer, what's the general advice that you're giving them? Is it career based or is it more on their script?
Well, I won't give too much of my mentorship ideas away because that would spoil it for whoever I mentor. But I like people to leave with just a little bit of confidence in what they're doing is the right thing, and hopefully give them some tips and tricks. Which I've done a lot of shorts now. Directed a few myself, exec produced over 35. So I've learned a lot of tips and tricks along the way, and I feel like I've got a lot of knowledge to pass on in this department. Especially a lot. Not that many people are lucky enough to go all the way to the Oscars, and there's a whole chunk of filmmaking experience that happens there, and not all of it is good. It can be really difficult, quite scary. So I like to prepare people, even if they've got an idea in their head, prepare people for the what might seem like the impossible. Anybody right now can have an idea and go on and win the Oscar. And that's the most exciting thing about that short film Oscar. Lives can change, and it can genuinely happen to anyone. We were not prepared, so I love having that experience now and being able to prepare others. I think every year when the short film nominees are nominated and it's announced, I tend to get emails saying, "Oh, can we have a call?" And I love doing that because I like to try and help and prepare people where possible that are about to go on that mad journey. So yeah, a lot of my mentorship is around that really, just you know, tips and tricks and my secrets to getting to the next level, um, and what may happen in the very unlikely event that someone can go on that incredible journey.
And I want to talk about your company, Slick Films. So, Slick Films has become one of the most respected production companies when it comes to short films. And many of your short films are reaching global audiences and making it to the top of film festivals. So, I want to ask you, what's your core mission with Slick Films? What's your ethos? And what are the stories that you personally love to tell?
Oh well, thanks for saying that. It's really nice. I'm very proud of Slick Films and what we're doing and how we're growing. And we've just recently got our first TV commission, so it does feel like we're stepping up and we're doing the right thing. And at times it's felt like, where is this going? You know, will this ever work? It's really, really hard. But yeah, I'm very proud of it, and I'm very proud of what type of films we're making and what type of work we're doing. We like true stories at Slick Films, but that's not all we do. We like to, use film to kind of raise awareness uh, about issues that need to be in the spotlight. That's predominantly what we do, but also we want to entertain people. So I'd say 1 in 5 films will just have a film like The Painting and the Statue, which is directed by Freddie Fox, which there isn't really a message behind that other than it's just a beautiful love story between a painting and a statue, and that's it. And that's all it needs to be. And that's also cinema. That's really important to us, to entertain people, to not just, have a selection of films that are just like banging the drum about an issue. They also have to entertain. They also have to have amazing characters. And we also can every now and again throw in a film like The Painting and the Statue.
I think it's fair to say they're always very unique, original, sort of passionate projects. Is that something you always look for, especially as well? Are there things you look for from the actual person as a screenwriter, not just the project to work with?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I like to say uh, that's more important than the project. You know, I think you're going to spend a lot of time with these people, so yeah, you want it to be a nice experience along the way. I think that's yeah far more important than the project sometimes. Um, and if people are making the film for the right reasons, you can tell a mile off, you know. And luckily we've never really been faced with people that aren't doing it for a good reason. We've been very fortunate that people we seem to attract really good projects, really nice people, and a lot of talent. So I feel very fortunate that we haven't really had to filter very much. It's I think filmmakers usually are speaking from the heart. It's quite rare that they're not. Um, so yeah, we're lucky in that sense.
Have you noticed a trend at all with what sort of stories land well with festival programmers and audiences?
Um, I mean, it's so hard to say, isn't it? Because there are thousands of short films every year, thousands of features as well. I think, you know, it's clear that the quality has to be super, super high. That's just like a given. If it's not, you're not getting anywhere close to a festival. But you know, the it's just it's a bottleneck. There are thousands and thousands of short films and festivals like Tribeca can only program like what 20 short films, and they've got the pick from like I don't know, maybe 10,000, 12,000, 15,000. I don't know. Like it's really hard. Um, so if you get one of those laurels like Tribeca, TIFF, Sundance, you know, these humongous festivals, you know, you're so fortunate because it really is difficult. And I think again, you can look at what's winning the Oscar, what's winning the BAFTA, what got selected at Tribeca and Sundance, and then you can go, oh well, I'll do something like that. But I think that's wrong. I think you need to just stick to what you want, what stories you want to tell, and hopefully one day it will just line up, and you know, you just got to do you. I think, but high quality. I think festivals are looking for high quality cinema. And they're looking for originality, and they're looking I think that most of the time it's a challenge for festival programmers to program, right? They've only got a time slot. They hire that cinema for 90 minutes. And if a film is 40 minutes, that's really good. They want to program what 10 films in a block. So I'd like to say that I do feel like the time, the length of a film does matter. Yes, every year there are the examples, aren't there, at the Oscars, and people will point out to me and say, "Yeah, but that one's 35 minutes," and I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. You know, it slipped through the net." But I would say on the whole, like 99% of films are programmable because of the length. So I think it's a real consideration when if you're a script writer out there right now and you've got you know, a 40-page script, do consider the length if you want to get that made, you know. Um,
What would
yeah.
you say that ideal page count is?
Such a good question. If I see a 19-page script, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, 18, anything between 15 and 20. I think that's the perfect length for a short film. Anything less than that, and we've made a lot of films that have a shorter page count than 15 pages. But I do feel like the audience needs to spend enough time with the characters to fall in love with them. I think around the 13-minute, 13 page, 14 page, the audience starting to fall in love with the characters, hopefully, or start to learn about them and start to be invested with them. So if you can spend another few pages where the audience is completely locked in and then hit them with the end, that's why I think it's kind of yeah, I think that's why it's kind of perfect. And that's why the odd short film that's like 39 minutes does do well because screen time, right? Like they have the chance to the audience has the chance to really fall in love with the characters. But then look, there's short films that do so well, and they're 5 minutes long, and they
Yeah.
manage to get their audience, their reader, to be captivated very quickly. I'm just talking like in general.
Make us fall in love in 13 minutes or less.
Yeah, yeah. If it's possible, yeah.
I like that. So you work really closely with emerging talent through Slick Films. Can you just tell me about how you support young writers and directors and what that whole life cycle process can look like from idea, script to finished production and then to promoting the film and distribution?
I think we're open to take risks on people, and I think it comes from the fact that no one would take a risk on us really. And if they did, you know, I think they would be happy that they did. So I do feel like we're all right, uh, just going for it, And if we meet someone and they're really passionate and they're nice and they've got a good story, you know, we'll be like, let's do it. There was a time where I'd come back and in our monthly meetings and I'd say, yeah, we've got another 7 short films. And they're like, what are you doing? Why have you got what's happened? I'm like, oh, I can't help it. I used to go to a film festival and pick up another few short films and they're like, well, we can't make them all. I'm like, yeah, but they need help. Look, they were like us. And yeah, so I found it very difficult to say no. But the process usually, we have consolidated a lot of that now into our film fund because there is only so much that any one organization can do to help, right? Um, but yeah, I think script development is huge, making sure that that script is it's the Bible to anything, right? It's what will attract an actor. It's what will attract a good crew. It's literally the blueprint to any good film. So a lot of our focus goes on script development and making sure if it's a first time director or first time filmmakers that they've got a really good team around them. And I think the DOP is key. For the Silent Child, I made sure that I had someone more experienced than me. I'll ever be grateful for Ali, who was the cinematographer on the Silent Child. He was way more experienced than me. If you're a writer and you're going to direct your project, you absolutely can do it. But I would advise not picking a DOP who's your mate, who's also not made a film. Try and pick someone not too experienced, who's like Roger Deakins, and you need someone who's made like a bunch of short films and they've got a good portfolio, you know. Um, and then it's just using our network and our relationship. So when that film is done, it we've worked so hard at it by attending these festivals and keeping up relationships, networking. I used to hate the word network and I thought, oh, I'm not very good at it, but it is really key to sustain these relationships with festivals because we can just go to certain festivals and all right, it doesn't guarantee us that they're going to select the film, but it might help it get seen a little bit more. So we are able to just say, look, we've got a bunch of short films, we'd love you to take a look. Or if I'm just networking at a festival, I can, you know, pitch a film. So that's a big part of what we do. We use our experience, our network to try and promote and elevate these projects, and if they're aligned with Slick, which they will be if we select them and choose to work with the people behind them, then we're always going to be compelled to work really hard to make sure it gets out there and gets seen.
And if a writer were to pitch to you their script, do you like to see a visual aspect with that as well, or is the script enough? Or
I love to see a visual. In fact, that's the first thing I will look for. We get sent hundreds of scripts each month, and we are having to divert people to our fund. But if there's a treatment there, I'll always just have a little look at that because I think that will help me visualize what kind of what their expectations are and what their quality, their level of quality is like. If image research is underrated. It's hard to everyone thinks it's easy just to go on shot deck and select images. You've really got to put a mood together and yeah, I think I love to see a really well designed, presented uh, visual deck. I really do. I think that helps bring any script to life. Yeah.
That's something that always comes across really well in all of your films is the aesthetic and the visual is always so strong
Oh,
in
thank you very
terms of,
much.
yeah, along with the story that you're telling. I want to quickly dive into what you think the future of short films and storytelling is going to look like, especially when it comes to the platforms, Netflix now. You've also got YouTube and even TikTok. So all the streaming giants are sort of stepping into the arena of short film storytelling.
Mm.
How do you think that's going to shape the industry and the kind of stories?
Yeah, I think it is exciting now. You know, Netflix and even Disney have bought a couple of our short films. That's great. I mean, it really is. It's a medium on its own. So it's finding some respect. But then again, they've always been around, haven't they? But yeah, I think it's a good time for short films. I am a little bit scared about the attention spans, especially the, I sound so old now, but especially the youth. I think if I met someone half my age, they'd probably have half the attention span on a device or something. They would need to be hooked a lot quicker than I would. Um, and that's why I will forever push the cinema experience. Yes, cinemas may be becoming less popular, and even in 20 years' time, there may be less cinemas. But I'm confident that the cinema experience will always exist because it's still one of the biggest grossing businesses in the world, film, and like the box office numbers with certain films, you can't argue with them. So it obviously works, whether or not that's a certain model that works. But yeah, I think the cinema experience is so important because when you're there with your popcorn and your drink and you're around other people and the film starts, you can't just scroll up. You have to stay there, and it forces people to be a little bit more patient. That communal experience. So I will forever, call me old school, whatever. Like I will forever push that experience, and it's great to see the Academy holding on to that as well. Like you can't win an Oscar for a feature film unless you go through uh, the cinema channels where you screen that film. And I think at one point that was in jeopardy, and it's not. So I think the Academy will always protect cinema, thank God. And then there's people like Sean Baker who's flying the indie film flag as well, who's promoting that. So I'm all aboard on that. But yeah, like when you said TikTok, I'm like, oh bloody hell, like yeah, it's micro content, right? And it's got its place. It's amazing, but I think it's that micro content is different to cinema, in my opinion. You know, yeah, I think it's an interesting time. The short film, and then there's content. I think they're very different.
Yeah, that's actually important to differentiate between those two. Do you think they follow still a similar structure, even if it's micro of beginning, middle, or end, or needs to make you think about something?
I don't know, actually. I think some content is really bad. There's some really good content as well, and maybe they do follow traditional methods and structure. Um, But yeah, I don't know. There's too much of it. It's no one's fault. It's just there's so much content out there, and that's the way that people are becoming rich. That's the way people are promoting their business. That's the way people are promoting what they really love and care about. So it's serving a massive purpose. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have the answers for it. I'm just I'm holding on to cinema.
I know, I agree, because your film, The Silent Child, actually brought about change in reality.
It did, yeah, and we're very proud of that. And any of our films. There's another film at the moment, A Matter of Minutes, that is hopefully going to do the same for nut allergies, and that's what film should be for. Like real film. Not all film can be entertaining, but like we're very proud that some of the work that we're doing is genuinely making change. I think The Silent Child was a catalyst for a GCSE in British Sign Language. You know, we can look back on that and join the dots backwards and say, yeah, we definitely the film largely contributed towards that, you know. And having the right actors in that role. If we wouldn't have cast Maisie Sly, who's a profoundly deaf actress, it wouldn't have been authentic, and it wouldn't have spoke to the world. I think largely it's her involvement and the right casting. There's loads of elements, you know. Yeah.
And what's your take on AI tools like ChatGPT? How do you are they positive views, negative views? Do you think they have a place as a tool? And do you think also do you think it will mostly affect AI tools will mostly affect things like editing? Will it affect actors? Just want to get your opinion on those.
Yeah. I mean, look, I feel like ChatGPT is like an advanced Google search. You know, it's just 30 times faster. You can ask it a question and it can, you know, research 13, 15 sources all at once. That would take you, 10 times longer to do that on Google. So I think that's great. You know, it is. I feel like I've read a few scripts that have been AI generated and you can tell, and they're horrendous. I'm yet to read a good one, but I think there's certain things that you can tell that are not human, that are AI generated. Maybe in 10 years' time it'll be seamless, but it's not yet. Um, is it a positive thing? I think replacing humans is terrifying. There were films about that 20 years ago, and now we're actually talking about it. And I'm glad that the whole writer's strike happened, and there's a massive pushback on humanity there, um, and what that would mean for humanity. Sorry, um, but yeah, of course, there's positives. It's helping people's workflow, but I think it's terrifying at the same time. If films are going to be made completely on AI, I personally wouldn't be. I would be intrigued. I don't know how successful they would be, but it's happening, isn't it? You know, we are now competing with AI. I don't know. That's a depressing question. I think.
I don't want to end things on a depressing note. I'm with you on I prefer the human experience. Absolutely.
I hope most people do, right? I think they do. It is just making a lot of people's lives easier in certain elements, but is it, is it taking away certain things from us that we don't even know yet? I think so.
Also, I never realized I know the word palpable and testament exists, but I've never seen them pop up quite so much since ChatGPT. I even see it in adverts, and you can tell. It's like what you
Yeah,
say. There's a
yeah,
different prose or a different sort of
yeah,
language that stands
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it's quite obvious if you look out for a few signs, and that would put me off if I read a script. I'm like, oh, this is you can tell, which is a good thing right now. But obviously that will probably develop further, so you can't tell, and that's when it's scary. When you're literally like, well, is it not? I don't know. Um,
Well, thankfully,
mm,
Slick Films is keeping the heart and humanity in filmmaking. So
yeah, and we
thank you
always
for that.
will. Yeah.
Absolutely. Chris, thank you so much for such a generous and insightful conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sophie. Like, it's been great questions. You kept me on my toes throughout
Oh well, you threw it back really good.
that.
So
Oh, that's great.
I'll just finish with a quick outro, and then I'll ask you just where everyone listening, when they do come to listen to this, can find you online. And so anything you want to say there, and then we'll finish, and I'll leave you with Damian. So I'll just quickly say this. So your journey from actor to Oscar-winning director is truly inspiring, and your work through Slick Films continues to shine a spotlight on what short-form storytelling can achieve. So can you let us know how writers can find you online or follow your work, and how can they learn more about Slick Films and any opportunities to collaborate?
Oh, thanks so much for saying all that. Yeah, I mean, I think we're most active on Instagram, LinkedIn, and uh, yeah, we have a film fund as well, the Slick Films Fund. Um, so if anyone is interested in that, I also work with Outstanding Screenplays as a judge and a mentor. So any scripts that make it far down in the competition, I'm likely to read and maybe even mentor you. Um, so yeah, hopefully there's a channel somewhere that you can find me.
Amazing, Chris. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Really appreciate it.